A good Erev Shabbos. In our world, there's usually a handy term within arm's reach if you want to make fun of or deride a group or a particular attitude. Since the 1960s, the mocking nickname tree huggers has been around to deride environmentalists, particularly people who care about preserving and protecting nature, woodlands. It's a little bit funny of a name, it's a little bit silly, and it's a bit dismissive. You imagine a bunch of blissed out hippie types chanting, meditating in the forest, standing in the way of progress and industry and land development. First of all, the idea of tree hugging itself is a little bit more complicated. Second of all, it seems, based on our Parsha this week, Parsha Shoftim, from the middle of Chumash Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, that the tree huggers may have a good point indeed, in fact, a very well-founded one. As is often the case, tree hugging is an idea whose roots go much deeper, if you'll pardon the pun, than the news of the past few decades. It turns out there was an incident in India in the 1700s where a prince wanted to clear land and harvest timber to build himself a nice palace. So this alarmed a certain set of locals who were very concerned. So they protested this wanton destruction of their beautiful local timberlands. They actually did embrace the trees as a protest against the clear cutting that was supposed to take place. They put themselves between the timbermen and the timber, and as it turned out, hundreds unfortunately died in an effort to protect these trees. The long-term effects, however, were that the region has since become a protected woodland, and the story became famous. So it's not just a mocking nickname. People actually did offer up their lives for this, number one. And number two, not only is there nothing wrong with hugging, it's been shown in clinical tests to reduce stress, lower cardiovascular reactivity, which is a good thing, and other health benefits. So trees is a good thing, and hugging is also a good thing. Most probably even without those clinical study results, any of us who's been on a starvation diet of severely reduced hugs in the past year and a half would certainly be ready to testify to its part in well-being. Now, is this concern with trees anything new, anything modern of the contemporary age? No, it's not. In Parsha Shoftim, which as its name implies has a good bit to do with civic legislation, judges, magistrates, soldiers, the military, obviously a society has to have laws that govern it even in the times when darker forces of the human soul are unleashed, in times of conflict and battle. So as a preparation to go to battle, the Torah in this week's Parsha gives specific instructions to the government when it sends soldiers out to fight. Before the battle, one of the Kohanim, a priest who's anointed to the specific task, he's actually called the Meshuach la Milchama, this Kohen goes out and addresses the troops and tells them that God is in charge of everything and they shouldn't fear, and then he proclaims a series of exemptions. People who are not obligated to fight in a war of expansion. If it's a war of self-defense, it's a slightly different story. Those who are exempt from service in this case include someone who built a new house but did not yet dedicate it and live in it, someone who planted a vineyard and did not redeem it yet, and someone who got betrothed but not yet married, which reference to various phases of relationship commitment that nowadays we do together, one right after the other. Used to be over a longer scale of time. These, along with others, and particularly the faint of heart, who probably would not do so well under the stresses of battle, are all allowed to return home at this point, before the troops go out to battle. This chapter also includes a mitzvah always to offer peaceable terms of surrender to an adversary, because the Torah tells us we should prefer peace to war. It seems obvious, but clearly not every culture in the world, or even in Israel's neighborhood, shares that sentiment. Then the Torah turns to our topic. It says, Ki satzur el ir yamim rabim lehilachem aleha. The Safsat says, when you besiege a city for many days in order to capture it, it says, do not destroy its trees. Lo yisashchis es eitza lindoyach alav garzan. Don't chop them down with an axe. Ki mimenu soichel. You'll eat from the trees. V'oisai lo yisichris. Don't destroy them. Ready for this? Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. It asks, is a tree like one of those people that you're fighting against? Lavai mipanecha b'matzor. That you're going to include it in the siege and you're going to seek to destroy the tree also. There may be times when the violence of war, sad and tragic though it be, is necessary. That's what the Torah is saying, and yet it says, keep your head about you. Remember what the ultimate purpose is of conflict. We're trying to get to a point where conflict is no longer necessary. And if you destroy everything now, when you get to that point where there will be peace, you won't have anything left. The fact is that we are stewards, indeed, and we have a responsibility to try and leave things at least as well, if not better, condition than we found them. Lo sashchiz, do not destroy the trees wantonly, as our verse tells us here. That becomes a blanket prohibition. We're not allowed to waste anything, and an impulse also to conserve what we have. We're careful not to throw away bread that is still edible. We're careful not to ruin lamp oil that's still usable. We're prohibited from chopping up furniture for firewood, and numerous other examples of very local scale conservation that the Talmud mentions in numerous places. Bava Kama has a discussion on page 91b about exactly how much fruit or how much olive oil a tree has to still be capable of producing in order to preserve it from harvesting, from being chopped down. Rabbi Hanina states a belief there that his son of his paid the ultimate price for cutting down a fig tree before its time, while it was still able to produce. So all that speaks to the idea that no matter what the times are, peace, war, or anywhere in between, and how much more so when there isn't any conflict, we're obligated to act responsibly and mindfully of the environment around us. But let's move in for an even closer look at this analogy between a person and a tree, which we're going to find very fruitful. Again, pardon the pun. The Gemara in Tainus, which we learned together a few years ago, recalls on page 7a the verse in Proverbs that we mention frequently. In fact, every time we return the Sefer Torah to the Aron, we say, Eitz chayim hi l'machazikim ba. The Torah is a tree of life to those who hold on to it. Rabbi Zera mentions the name Rabbi Yochanan that one angle, one facet of interpretation of our verse of is a man like a tree, or a person is like a tree of the field, is the continuation, is eat from the tree, don't cut it down. That's an image of Torah scholars of good character. What we should do is study from their teachings. That's the idea of eating from their fruits. Don't denigrate them. The Maharal of Prague picks up on the comparison between people and trees and writes that we all have a purpose. Trees and plants and flowers have a purpose. They're supposed to grow and produce seeds and fruits so there can be more like them. So humans, even more so, have to be productive and fruitful and maximize, use all our potential to the fullest. There's also a way trees are different from people, and even that gives us some more insight into the comparison. Animals and people are not stuck to one spot. We're not rooted into place. We roam as we please. We seek food and shelter and satisfaction. A tree, by contrast, is by definition rooted into its place. It's stuck right there to its source of nourishment and sustenance, interestingly enough. And as a result of that, it's more enduring, it's stronger, and it's even taller than anything in the animal kingdom. That gives us an insight for those of us who are maybe not so rooted that we could be a little more rooted. And what is it that's most deeply rooted in us? What's the most unmovable? Our character traits, our emotions, our midot. If you think that our intellect is the most expressive part of us, think how easily we can argue one side of a discussion or conversation and then switch, change our minds, if you will. We can be very attached to an idea and the next day find another one that we like even more and drop that first one like a hot potato. But changing our personality, changing our character traits is a different story. And that's just what we're called upon to do, to refine ourselves, to improve our midot, our midas, character traits, not only in the realm of what we know, but in the quality of what we do and how we do it, most particularly in our relationship with others. In fact, there's a comment in Torah Or that our emotional traits are very much like vegetation because they exemplify growth and development. In order to grow, the fruit has to be attached to its source, as do we have to nurture our attachment to the tree of life that we spoke about before, Eitz Chayim Hi. Earlier in Chumash Devarim, earlier in the book of Deuteronomy, we read, V'yadaita hayom, you have to know this day. V'hashevaisa el vavecha, you have to take it to heart. You have to take it into your emotions and your feelings. Ki Hashem hu Elokim That God is God in the heavens above and in the earth below, and there is none other. Even what we learn and know isn't complete until it affects our personalities and our interactions with one another. So let's extend the tree metaphor just one step further. This week we are celebrating the joining of two family trees, the branches of which became intertwined. Earlier this week, when Moshe married Tzipporah, we're thrilled to have the Chassan and Kala with us Shabbos morning, hopefully, and Sharona and I would like to invite everyone to our house for Kiddush, a grand open house Kiddush and Suda after davening on Shabbos morning. Several people asked me if the newlywed couple were on a honeymoon. I think the plan is that they will take a trip later together at the semester break, but the way we do it is not to send the couple off into the world by themselves right away after the wedding. Rather, we welcome them into the community with a week of rejoicing, Sheva Bracha, 7 days of each meal having 7 blessings. They're recited as they were under the chuppah. They were said at the chuppah. The blessings were said at the chuppah Monday evening, and we repeat those. We want to underscore and reiterate and echo those blessings over and over again. So we'd like to do that as a community. So everyone is invited over after shul, whether or not you plan to be in shul Shabbos morning, even if you, for whatever reason, can't make it to shul. Please come by between approximately 1 and 3. You are warmly welcome to join us. We'll be doing our best to maintain social distancing and masking when we're not eating. So we'll smile with our eyes a lot, as we've been doing all throughout this year. We're thrilled and delighted and overjoyed at this wonderful marriage, and we look forward to seeing Tzip and Moish help each other to grow and to blossom and to branch out and to maintain their roots, bear fruit, and all the other tree metaphors that you can think of that we've been using. The main thing is that it should be in good health and happiness. We know that there is both sunshine and rain that are required to keep a tree growing, so we hope and pray that all the sunshine and all the rain and everything that falls their way will be for barachas, for blessings, and that as we're now into the month of Elul, with all the expressions of Elul that we have been speaking about, Ani ledodi v'dodi li, I'm my beloved is mine, Ish l'reyehu matanus levyonim, one to another, gifts to the needy, and Ina leyada v'samti lecha, when it falls to his hand, I give him place of refuge, that these hint in order to tefillah and tzedakah and to Torah. That they, the new couple, and we should all fulfill all of these in the remaining weeks leading up to Rosh Hashanah. We should all turn our attention to these aspects of tshuva, of prayer, of giving tzedakah, and of learning, and that this new family, amidst the Kehillat Shari Torah family, and amidst the global Jewish family, flourish and grow and stand as tall as the cedars of Lebanon, and together we should all enjoy a happy and healthy and sweet New Year. Good Shabbos, Mazel Tov, and Shana Tova.